Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're checking out a Roach Forest Unlimited deck. So going to switch over to probably a couple of videos of Unlimited at least while we go through things, since not a lot is going on in the rotation space right this second. But honestly, fairly decent Roach deck, does a good job, tops out at 4, runs really I think just the one legendary if I'm looking at this right. Yeah, so just Liza, which is actually pretty cool. Makes it a reasonably cheap deck. I've actually looked at a couple of cheap decks in the last couple of videos, and this one in particular is fairly decent. So we've got one cheap deck for rotation and one cheap deck for unlimited, which is good. If you guys are interested in playing Roach Forest, definitely recommend giving it a go. I'm not the biggest Roach Forest player, as personally I don't enjoy the deck too much, but I can definitely see its power, and giving it a strong go is always worthwhile. So we are going to get right into it and take a look. So our first game is against Shadow. Shadow, not too problematic when I play Roach, usually, since we're usually quicker, which is good. A lot of Shadow decks lately have been on the slower side. The only real problem you'll ever run into playing Forest, I've noticed, is coming up against Ward. So coming up against Haven is typically a absolute nightmare, since they do run a good Ward package, and if you come up against a good Haven player, they will ward you out just as you're getting your Roach combo ready. Of course, there are ways around that. It's not an instant loss, it's just a tougher match. It's definitely one of your less favoured. But this matchup in particular, honestly, I don't mind too much. So I did need a Roach. We did luckily get one, which is great. Being able to use the Airbound Barrage to bounce it back and remove this without really any penalty. I'm sorry if I still sound sick. Unfortunately, I'm recording these videos in batches, so if you watched my last one, you will know I caught a bit of a cold. That's the way things go. Still fighting through, bringing you guys some content. So not really doing a lot there other than bouncing our Roach and throwing out Spring Green just as an extra card. Twilight Queen is not a card I like to have to deal with here though, since it's got 5 defense, which is not the easiest thing for me to counter. All I could really do now was focus on playing my Roaches out and dealing some damage to it with Queen. Of course, I don't advise evolving like I did here, honestly. This was mainly just in the hope that I could get 2 damage to deal to it, but honestly, the only card that could help me now would be a Fairy Torrent, I think. So, not Fairy Torrent, sorry. What's the other one? Oh, I forgot off the top of my head now. The Arrow. So, Whirlwind Roaches. We're going to get a couple of those out, which is nice. Or at least one, sorry, for the bounce. Plus set up a nice defensive line, and we're actually going to take out the 6-2, since we're now set up for next turn to go for lethal using our Roaches and a Fairy Torrent. So we can actually just go Roach, Roach, probably Pixie Mischief and Roach if we want, but Fairy Torrent with Liza could work too. There's a lot of ways we could really take this and just end the game here. That's one thing Roach seems to be quite good at, being able to pull more Roaches or replay them enough that once you get to turn 6 or 7, it's pretty much game over. 6 is ideal, but 7 I found for me is most common. So our next match is actually a Forest versus Forest mirror match. These matches do tend to come down who goes first. Unfortunately, I did get to go first this game, but it's not actually the be-all end-all, since some players are running Ancient Elf, which I believe my opponent for this match is actually running. And that does present a problem if you are playing your own Roach deck, since if they get a good Ancient Elf turn that you can't easily remove, you could run into some trouble. There's actually a card this deck doesn't run, which surprised me a little bit. I think it was sacrificed for better removal / consistency, since Ancient Elf 1, not being a bad card, does create a little bit of a slow move. So it can potentially clog you up and slow you down, since it doesn't overtly help you with drawing or replaying Roaches on its own, without, of course, already having Roaches and setting things up beforehand. So most cards in this deck, though, are either really cheap Roach pings, being, of course, 2 or below, or a removal that draws you cards like Angelic Smite, or something that removes problem cards like Predatory. At least, that's what I've seen so far. So there's not too much that I could do for this match, other than just boost this Roach up, keep it going, not take it too crazy. We end up with some nice removal in the Angelic Smite. We end up with some nice returns with Fairy Torrent, Nature's Guidance, and Pixie Mischief, and having a Roach in hand really does just overall help us out. The only real tough situation here is going to be able to get everything in our hand. We did get our own Liza, which is pretty decent. With a nice return here, we can actually take advantage and get our Roach up a little bit, since we really do need to push these Roaches as much as we can. So I can actually go for a 3 boost on them, which is great, even if it costs me an Evo. And I believe that does take our Roach up to the 4 mark, which is so close to what we needed at. We're definitely looking for that turn 4 win. Turn 7 win. So turn 6, not a lot we can really do. Our Roach isn't quite ready to go face yet. And since I only have 1 in hand, there wasn't a lot else I could do other than, of course, focus on getting another Roach into my hand. Since now we're actually set up to go for a double Roach play with the Fairy Torrent play, to be able to go for another Roach play. Of course, playing something like Fairy first, so that I can actually make sure my points don't overflow too much, and Fairy Torrent doesn't cost 5. Luckily, that's another thing, it's very easy, but they did not go for the Ancient Elf play, which actually works in our favor a bit. Predatory Might, perfect card, deals 5 damage, so we actually can remove the 4/5 and keep everything and go for a very easy Roach, dealing well over 20 damage. So not too crazy of a setup, but I mean the Predatory Might definitely come in handy. The other option was just to Angelic Smite and buy another turn, and that would have probably killed us since they pretty much had their own Roach setup going, so we definitely needed the win there. So while I'm definitely not the craziest on like OTK style decks like this deck is definitely good. There's no denying that. Objectively, it's just a good deck. There's not a lot that can go wrong with it. You don't brick super easily. It's got so much draw power and so many options in it that if you do manage to brick, it's extremely unlikely, since everything is so cheap. And by turn 3, typically I'll have a Roach in hand, if not by turn 4, and then I can usually rapidly boost those up to get the win by about turn 7 on average, which is pretty decent. Sometimes, of course, you can get dragged out, and usually those games are the ones you will lose. Sometimes you get super lucky and have the turn 6 win. I haven't managed to get a turn 5, because I don't know if that's even really possible without super ideal plays, but it still does a nice job. So if you guys did enjoy this video and you'd like to see more like it, be sure to like button in the like button down below. Comment with anything relevant, I don't know, whatever you want. The deck list will be in the description below. Until next time, guys, see ya.